Hello everybody, welcome to today's lesson. I'm going to be talking about fretboard diagrams, and I'm going to use A minor pentatonic to talk about this topic. So you might have seen a diagram like this and wondered what all of the different symbols mean. That's exactly what we're going to talk about in this lesson. So here we have two different symbols. We have a red box with a T, and we have a gray circle. Now your T's represent the tonic or the root note of the scale that you are playing. Like I mentioned, we're in A minor. So that means that everywhere that you see a T, that represents the A on your fretboard. Everywhere that you see a grayed out circle, that is a note that is in the scale, a note that is not the tonic. So it's just one of the scale tones. Now the guitar is a fretted instrument, which means that we can group the notes in certain ways that help us to memorize where things are. Now these groups overlap one another, and that's important. But more importantly, these groups repeat across the fretboard. So if you notice here, we have the blue group, which appears twice. And that is because anything that happens in the open position of your guitar is also going to happen in the 12th position or the 12th fret. And so this makes it so that it becomes a pattern. So it's something that reappears. And so if you memorize it in one spot, you can play the same exact pattern in another spot and get a similar sound. Here we have all our groups in the A minor pentatonic. We're going to talk about each one individually. This one here is what we would call pattern number 1. And the reason it's the first pattern is because the root or the tonic is on our 6th string. And so there are no lower A's on the guitar fretboard. This is our lowest A. So it makes a good place to start. And this pattern is probably one of the most used in pop and rock music. It's going to be the one that you want to memorize before anything else. Now notice how it also has a stack of notes right on that 5th fret. So the 6th string has a tonic, the 1st string has a tonic, and then every single string in between also has a note. So it just makes it a good place to anchor your patterns as you begin learning. You can always come back to this area of the guitar and always make sure that you land on a tonic relatively easily. Let's look at pattern number 2. Now pattern number 2 is similar to pattern number 1 in that it spans across 4 frets. However, it starts with finger number 2. And that makes it so that you don't have to move your hand around while you're playing the pattern. So this pattern has a lot of the notes from pattern number 1, and it also has 2 tonics in it. Let's look at pattern number 3. This one is a little bit different because it spans across 5 frets. And so even though we're going to start with our 2nd finger on that 6th string, eventually when we get to the 2nd string, we're going to have to shift positions because we end up on a 13th fret, and then we move back on our 1st string. So this is the first time that we're moving out of that comfortable little 4 fret position. And here we have pattern number 4. Pattern number 4 is also one that is used a lot, and the reason is that it also has a root note in a very strong position. So it has a root note that is on string 5. So string 6 is a very strong and low string. String 5 is also a very strong and low string. And so this pattern gets used also a lot, just like pattern number 1. And just as promised, here it is repeated in the open position. So if you look, it's the same exact pattern, same exact shape. The only reason it looks a little different is because the frets on our open position are a little bit wider than they are at the 12th position. But if you notice, it's the same exact pattern. Then finally, we have our pattern number 5. Now, pattern number 5 shares that stack of notes that has the tonic on the 6th and 1st string. So it shares that stack of notes with our first pattern. The very first thing that I recommend guitar students do as they're learning these patterns is to memorize pattern number 1 as best they could and make it musical. By that I just mean emphasizing that tonic so that you know, hey, I'm playing an A minor and there's no doubt about it. So that's the very first thing. Once you feel really comfortable with that first pattern, I recommend to extend that pattern into the other ones. And so it's not necessarily easier to go and memorize all of the patterns. I think that it's easier to begin expanding on what you already know. And so once you've got that pattern 1 down, just start adding some of the other notes from the neighboring patterns, and you'll notice that a different pattern emerges. And so here we have a pattern within a pattern. Now this diagram shows what it looks like across pattern 5, 1, 2, and a little bit of 3. Now some of the notes are missing, but we're only going to focus on the ones that are within this pattern within a pattern. And the pattern that I'm talking about here is a pattern of 2 notes, 3 notes, 2 notes, 3 notes, 2 notes, 3 notes. And so if we're starting on string 6, notice that we have 2 notes that we're playing. As soon as we move up to string 5, there are 3 notes. Now we move positions into string 4, back to 2 notes. And then we have 3 notes on string 3. Now we move positions again onto string 2 and we have 2 notes. And then we have 3 notes on string 1. So my recommendation is once you've got pattern 1 down, and you can play it with your eyes closed and without thinking too much about it, and you can make it musical, my suggestion is that you begin to expand into the neighboring patterns as opposed to just memorizing all of the patterns. You're eventually going to get there anyway, but doing it this way allows you to do things a little more musical because you can just move back and forth in a smaller area of your guitar fretboard. And as you do it, I recommend that you emphasize your tonic as much as you can. So as you're playing, slide into that tonic, bend and do pull-offs on hammer-ons that get you back on that tonic. Put some vibrato on that tonic. Just make it super clear that, hey, we are playing an A minor. There's no doubt about it. That's going to do it for this lesson. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. You can also find my information at frguitar.com. Please remember to like and subscribe and share if you find this information helpful. Okay, guys, I will see you in the next lesson.